Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, well, the year is wrapping up, and with it, well, the number of commanders we got this year, which was, I think, like around 400 new commanders, which is pretty crazy. And as exciting as many of those are, well, there are some of them in that list that, well, I'm not going to say aren't exciting. In fact, some of them are exciting. Some of them are really cool designs. They're just ones that I'm not going to play. For one reason or another, I will not play them because, well, a multitude of reasons. It could be just not my, kind of style of play. It's, maybe it's a reason that I've played decks that have been similar to them in the past, and other players have been like, hey, that's kind of like a deck that you shouldn't play because it does these things. And, yeah, that might be a couple of them. So with all that said, let's jump into them. So first up, we've got Aots' Deepest Betrayal. Now, I do want to mention something because, yes, there are going to be those of you out there that are going to say, hey, you shouldn't tell players not to play commanders, and I'm not doing that. I'm saying that these are personally commanders that I'm not playing. I'm not saying that you should not play them or that there aren't playgroups out there that are okay with them. I'm just giving you the reasons why I am not specifically playing with these commanders, even though some of them are kind of cool, like this one. Aots' Deepest Betrayal is a 4/4 bat god with flying and lifelink. I mean, we have Flample, right? Flying and Trample. Can we have, like, Lifelink? No, that doesn't really blow off the tongue as much. Anyways, 4/3, black. Whenever Aots attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, you make a 1/1 bat with flying. Whenever it dies, flip it over, essentially. It flips into Temple of the Dead. Taps for a black, pay 2 and a black, tap, transform it. Activate only if a player has 1 or fewer cards to hand, only as a sorcery. So, this commander, I think, is pretty interesting. Actually, I think all the gods, for the most part, are interesting. And now, this one, essentially, is not going to be played by myself for one reason. Well, discard. Yeah, this commander itself, obviously, is about discarding. Now, just attacking and forcing opponents to discard one card is not all that big of a deal. I mean, it's still, punishing opponents, essentially, and, giving them card disadvantage. But it also incentivizes you very heavily to make it so your opponents have no cards in hand. Because, again, when this commander attacks, if an opponent has no cards in hand, hey, you get to draw a card. So essentially, making them handless is a very, very good strategy for you. And that's quite easy to do. We'll talk about some cards that can help out here in a little bit. But it's quite easy to do, and it's quite a brutal strategy against opponents. And many opponents out there don't enjoy playing against this kind of a deck because, yeah, you're kind of just top decking the entire game then after you get down to 0 cards and hoping that you have something to deal with this or something to save you, and typically you're not going to get that. Or the player that has Aots will have a response. Like, even if you, again, destroy Aots, it flips over, and guess what? It flips over to something that it can easily flip back into if you built into that deck again that says, hey, yeah, everyone's not going to have hands except for me. And again, you only need one player having 1 or fewer cards in hand to flip this back over. So again, a commander that can be really hard to deal with, and a commander that can punish opponents in a way that many opponents don't like to be punished. But yeah, again, like I said, there are certain cards out there that can make it very, very easy to, well, make players go handless, like Opposition, a brutal card that is somehow now budget. So again, even on a budget, you can make this deck incredibly brutal. So that's not even like a limiting factor to say, oh yeah, it's just a budget deck. So like, it's fine. I used to think that about some decks out there. My, 20 board light Selenia deck was definitely one of those, and that was a no-no. Regardless, Opposition, enchant for 3 mana. Whenever a player casts a spell, that player discards a card. Brutal. Yeah, players love casting spells. I mean, that's kind of like what Magic does, essentially, except for just playing lands. There's certain decks that just play lands, but yeah, many of them out there, hey, you're casting spells. Oh, and when you do that, you have to discard a card. Cool. So essentially, 2 for the price of 1. Yes, this affects you as well, but again, even if you don't have a hand, you can quite easily get more and more cards, again, just by attacking with your commander when your opponents don't have hands. So there you go. Also, hey, Painful Quandary, also somehow budget now. I mean, again, I'm not trying to complain about a card being budget, but it's like, this is just next level, just torture when it comes to Magic. Chimp for 5 mana. Whenever opponent casts a spell, the player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. So again, unlike Opposition, this only affects your opponents, and it says, hey, yeah, you can choose not to discard a card, but if you don't, you lose 5 life. which is an absurd amount of life to lose. On top of that, again, if an opponent has no cards in hand, if they're casting a spell, I guess they have to have one card, they cast the spell. If they've got no cards to discard, then, yeah, they're losing 5 life. So, yeah, this is an incredibly punishing commander, one that says, yeah, hey, let's take this strategy that some playgroups just don't like, and let's just make it really beneficial to go really heavy into that strategy, making opponents have no cards in hand and making them just top deck throughout the rest of the game, and having brutal, ongoing effects again like oppression, also a brutal card, oppression and painful quandary. Yeah, you can do some really crazy things with this one. So again, this is a commander that I personally will not be playing. Next up, we've got a commander that is actually quite popular and really powerful, and this is one of those commanders that kind of just makes my list for a commander that I personally will not play because, well, it's too easy. It is just actually too easy. When they designed this, they're like, hey, yeah, we could have put any kind of limitations on this, and we did not. And therefore, yeah, it can be very broken in many ways, and also just, even if you're not building around that broken aspect of it, it's just pretty crazy as it is. A 3/3 Angel Elf with Flying Vigilance, got Shalyn Halar for 4 mana in total in Naya colors. Whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on a creature you control, Shalyn Halar deal that much damage to target opponent. Okay. Again, there is no limiting factor to this. It's not like, hey, triggers only once each turn or whatnot. Again, I'm usually not for like all these limiting factors on cards, but this one, it's like, Wizards, yeah, 4 mana for this effect is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Again, just in a typical, Selesnya deck. I mean, you obviously have Naya colors, right? But typically, right, the 2 colors that come to making a bunch of tokens, it's going to be, Selesnya colors. You got green and white, you make a bunch of tokens, and all of a sudden, yeah, you just cast a card, right before your turn, and you make 20 tokens or whatnot very easily, very effectively. There's plenty of ways to do that. And all of a sudden, you have 20 tokens in play, and then you just cast a single card that's like, hey, put a counter on all my creatures, and all of a sudden, you just dealt 20 damage. Of course, there's other ways to get even more counters. There's ways to make even more tokens. There's token doublers, triplers. There's all these things going on. And that does require some build around to actually get there, though not really all that much. Or again, something that combos with this, like the Red Terror. This and like everything else. This and a ham sandwich combos essentially, right? Because Shalyn Halar is like, oh, that. I think War Elemental's another one. There's a lot of cards that combo with this. Red Terror says a 4/3 Tyrannid for 4 mana. Whenever a red source you control deals damage to 1 or more opponents and or players, put a counter on the Red Terror. Hey, Shalyn Halar, a red source. Really? So essentially, yeah, you just deal damage with Shalyn Halar or anything that's red. You deal damage with it, and then all of a sudden you get a counter on this. Then Shalyn Halar's like, hey, you got a counter. Cool. I'm going to deal damage. Then the Red Terror is like, cool. You got a counter. Or you dealt damage. I get a counter. Whatever it is, essentially, this is infinite damage very easily. Again, you just need one thing to happen for this to happen, and all of a sudden, you win. It's all that matters. You just win just by doing nearly nothing. Okay, again, there's like 8 cards that combo with Shalyn Halar. Okay, maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but there's an absurd amount, including all B1. There's a lot of cards that combo with Shalyn Halar, so again, just too easy. It's really too easy, and again, even if you're not going combo, if you don't include any of those cards in the deck, still, if you just have like a Loyal Guardian in play, again, there's so many ways to make so many tokens very, very, very quickly. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, cool, yeah, okay, I'll go to my combat. Oh, cool, I got my commander. I'll get a counter on each creature I control. Yep, there's 10 damage, 20 damage, whatever it is. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, cool, you're gone. Okay, what's next? Oh, yeah, oh, wait, I've got another effect that actually gave me another one. I'm sorry, I forgot I have Hardened Scales in play. Okay, cool. Yeah, more damage. Yeah, it's just going to be absolutely absurd. It's absolutely crazy. It is an absurdly powerful commander, and again, in my opinion, just a bit too easy. Not just because of the combos, but again, because, yeah, you just get tokens out. You just get counters on them. There's plenty of ways to make an absurd amount of counters, an absurd amount of tokens. Just too easy. So again, in my opinion, a commander that I will not personally be playing. Next up, a commander that if this had come out probably like 5 years ago, 6 years ago or so when I started Commander, I probably have built a deck around this one. Helon the Radiant Dawn, a 4/4 legendary champion creature god for 4 mana in total. Well, it appears to be mono white, but it is not. It is in Azorius. When it enters the battlefield, return a target enchantment card that isn't a god from your grave to your hand, because you can pay 3 and a Phyrexian blue. So there you go, Azorius. Transform it, activate only as a sorcery. So yes, I will say that, yeah, this front part is not really all that scary, right? This front part is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. It is the back part as to why I will not build around this commander because, well, I've learned my, past, problems sometimes. Sometimes I learn from the past experiences. Helon, the Warped Eclipse, a 4/6. Oh my gosh. Looking at how tiny that font is just hilarious and just hurts me. Legendary enchantment creature, Phyrexian God. You may cast spells as though they had flash. That's already very powerful. So again, your commander is basically Vidalcan Orrery on the backside. On top of that, hey, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. Okay, so now Wizards might have been designing this like, okay, yeah, so like, cool. I mean, you can like cast things on your opponent's turns and you're punishing them when they're drawing cards. So yeah, I mean, you're going to get like a discount of 1 each turn, right? Just at a base level because you're drawing your card or they're drawing your card. But then, yeah, if they cast something like, I don't know, Brainstorm, cool. All right, they just drew 3 more cards, and there you go. You got them. You're punishing them for drawing cards. And it's like, no, that's not how this actually plays out at all. As with many commanders out there that can use and abuse wheel effects absurdly well, yeah, just a simple wheel is all of a sudden game-changing, game-ending, and also very, very annoying at a certain point. Even on a budget, we've got a lot of wheels, including, well, commit to memory. I mean, I guess memory is the wheel side of that. Aftermath, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. Okay, so again, at the very, very most on an opponent's turn, you are going to be paying 5 for this. Though again, if they did draw any cards, or if you force them to draw any cards, which you can in many ways, cool, this can cost just blue. Regardless, once you cast this, you will have no problem casting essentially everything. And if you drew into more wheel effects and some untap effects, that is absurd. So again, you are having every single player essentially Time Twister, and when you do that, you are going to have each of them draw 7 cards. You can also really mess up players' turns by doing this on their turn, because they're like, I have a plan, and you're like, let's change that plan by getting you some random cards. So all of a sudden, again, that is 21, again, assuming you have 3 opponents, 21 cards your opponents have drawn, 22 plus the one that they drew, to start the turn, essentially. And all your spells cost 22 less to cast. Now, you're in blue. Again, you've got access to plenty of ways, like a dramatic reversal, to untap things or turnabout, essentially, so you can get more and more mana on your turn. You also have access to, again, extra turn spells if you really want those. Yeah. And you also have access to more wheels, so you can wheel again. And you also have copy effects, too. So yeah, again, essentially, as soon as you just play 1 card and go off once, you are just done. The game is just done, and you have a very, very long and drawn-out turn, essentially. And again, that is the kind of thing that definitely appealed to me when I was younger in my Commander career. But yeah, as fun as it is to build that Rube Goldberg machine, it's not as fun for opponents, most of the time, most play groups, to actually watch you do that, because Solitaire is a game that you can just go play on your own. Yep, go goldfish your deck. That's basically what you're doing in front of other people. That's what I learned, and I really like doing that. I mean, I don't like putting other players through that, but I love building decks like this that are just like engines that just go and do crazy things, and I love that. The problem is, again, though, it's not really what many Commander players like to do. They don't like to watch you do that. So yeah, that's why, unfortunately, at least for me, I will not be building around Helon the Warped Eclipse. Luckily, this came out the time it did, and not 6 years ago, or I would probably have one of these decks just kind of, collecting dust over there. Anyways. Moving on, in a somewhat similar way, Rowan Sign of War. An incredibly cool design, but one that I definitely cannot build around. A 4/2 Human Wizard with Menace that costs 3 mana in Rakdos. Tap spells you cast this turn that are black and or red, cost X less to cast for X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate as a sorcery. Gross. Okay, so when it comes to Commander, there are certain cards out there that I maybe already utilized in a lovely life swap deck a long time ago. Selenia Dark Angel was like one of my first, I think, 10 episodes ever. A lot of fun, but again, I actually already mentioned why I took that one apart earlier, because I had like 20 board wipes in there, but also it utilized life-setting cards. Cards that say, hey, I would like to lose this much life. And I'm saying life-setting, I mean down. You really don't have ways to just life set up unless you're going infinite, essentially, with a variety of different things. So essentially, again, with this commander, you're like, okay, cool, yeah, I start off at 40, so I can afford to lose an absurd amount of life, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'll lose 30 life. Whatever, I'll go down to 10, tap my commander. All of a sudden, all my red and black spells cost 30 less to cast this turn. We already talked about why that's problematic with Heliod. But of course, with Heliod, I guess you gotta wait for your opponent's turn for this to happen. With Rowan, you're like, no, on my turn, this crazy stuff's gonna happen. Don't worry about it. So yeah, you're using stuff like Mischievous Poltergeist, which again, I love these kinds of cards. I love these kinds of effects. These villainous kind of decks that utilize cards again. They're like, hey, pay 1 life, regenerate me. And there's no limit to that. You can just keep doing that as many times as you want. And some players again might be like, why would you do that? And you're like, well, lose life because it's fun. Because Rowan's like, oh yeah, hey, how much life do you lose? 30. And then you tap Rowan and things go pretty crazy. So again, you lose 30 life. You could also utilize a lot of amazing untap effects. And you might think that, hey, you're in Rakdos. Blue and white are the ones that have untap effects, and I guess green as well. But you're like, oh, wait, no. Threaten effects. Threaten effects like involuntary employment that Wizards, and they've been changing this lately, does not specify opponent's creature. These are the kinds of cards you can use. Gain control target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, gains haste until turn, create treasure token. So again, you basically like, okay, cool. I'll pay a single red mana because again, Rowan reduced this cost and then some. So cast this for a single red mana. Gain control of Rowan, which you already have control of. Untap, tap again. All of a sudden your spells cost now 60 less, again in that example. And you get a treasure to replace the red mana that you utilize this for. So yeah, threaten effects are incredible with this. And then of course, again, even on a budget, we've got our owning Sanguinate essentially card. Cut to Ribbons. Ribbons the aftermath side. Each opponent loses X life. So yeah, quite easy, quite effective. All of a sudden you're like, oh cool, yeah, again, this costs 60 less? 60 less? Okay, cool. I'll cast it for black, X equals 60. You all lose! So yeah, this commander, again, can lead to some decently long turns, depending on, I guess, what your hand setup is. I mean, it could go pretty quick, I guess, because you can just cast a giant X spell to draw on your deck, then, drain your opponents a bit, and then cast another one to maybe tutor, and then go get cut to Ribbons, and then, drain them out. There's a lot of ways to take your opponents out with this kind of a commander. Yes, it can be quicker than, say, the Heliod version of this kind of a Storm build. It also can just be pretty brutal and pretty insane, and the power level on this is just a bit high. So yeah, overall, Rowan Sign of War, I really like this design. I think it's really cool. I think it's a bit overpowered, but overall, I'm sorry, Rowan, I will not be playing with you. And while you're at it, Rowan, you can tell that to your brother as well. Or I guess I could tell, Will, I'm sorry. I can tell you right now to yourself. Will Sign of Peace, a 2/4 human wizard with vigilance that costs 3 mana in Azorius. I will not be playing you either. Tap spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast for X the amount of life you gain this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, so again, Rowan, the more broken version of this essentially, okay? Again, most players out there maybe that are a little newer to the Magic scene might be like, well, life gaining is better than life losing, right? Yes, but it's also harder to gain life in batches than just lose life because you can just utilize cards like Mischievous Poltergeist that can set your life total. There aren't really cards that are just like, hey, gain 1 life for free whenever you want. Anyways, basically, this is essentially the exact same thing, but potentially even worse to play against because, again, whereas Rowan can, immediately get to that, 30 spells, or spells cost 30 less, Will takes a little bit of building up, still happens, but again, you are in colors, like I mentioned earlier, blue and white, that have a ton of fantastic untap effects. So you start things off with, a Congregate. Target player gains 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. Again, you're playing a 4-player game, you're taking advantage of that by saying, okay, cool, how many creatures are there? Oh, 10? Okay, cool. I'll gain 20 life. All of a sudden, yeah, you tap Will, everything costs 20 less. Also, hey, Sanguine Sacrament, something like this could really help you out as well. You gain twice X life, put this on the bottom of Silver's library, which I guess could be relevant as well. Regardless, again, you put a decent amount into that X, especially if you already, utilize something like Congregate early in the turn. To reduce this, you cast this, and then all of a sudden, for just 2 mana, you gained, again, in that example, another 40 life. All of a sudden, you're at 60. There you go. I guess you need to untap Will first. But you know what I mean. I guess you untap Will afterwards. Anyways, there's untap effects, dramatic reversal, untap all non-land permanents you control. An instant for 2 mana, but again, will just cost you a single blue mana with this kind of a commander. Do that, and again, when you're untapping all non-land permanents, again, that also untaps your mana rocks, which you definitely have in this kind of a deck, and then you can tap them again. So yes, essentially you're just going to be digging down in your deck with something like a Stroke of Genius, which essentially just going to be a single blue mana to draw like 60 cards or so. I guess or in that example was like 58. Still, draw an absurd amount of cards, do more untap effects, do more life gain if you really want to, and then all of a sudden, yeah, maybe just recast this out, get it back from your graveyard, recast this, mill out an opponent for 120 or however many cards essentially. It is a crazy good commander. Again, this is one that, yes, in my opinion, is not as good as Rowan because it doesn't have that explosive potential to just say, oh, yeah, okay, cool, I've got a thing that in play that can just set my life total down, whatever. Okay, I can just lose 30 life. Well, you can have a card that says, oh, I just gained 30 life because I want to. You need a little more setup than that. Once you get going, though, the ball gets rolling really quickly. And again, if your opponents can't stop you on that turn, there is basically no stopping you. And it can be a decently long turn to do that. And also, it's just a very powerful card. So again, I do like the design of this card. Again, I'm not saying these commanders aren't interesting or aren't appealing or that some players shouldn't play them. Just saying it's not for me, unfortunately, because again, I have learned that when you play a solitaire kind of a commander, some players don't like that very much. So yeah, unfortunately, will sign a piece. I will not be playing with you. Next up, another Azorius commander, Hilda of the Icy Crown. Now, this one is one that at first I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I could build around this. I could definitely play it. And then as it kind of got going, yeah, I just can't. And we'll talk about why with a couple of cards. A 3/4 Human Warlock for 4 mana in total in Azorius. Whenever you tap an untapped creature opponent controls, you may pay 1. When you do, choose 1. Create a 4/4 white and blue elemental creature token. Put a counter on each creature you control or scry to, then draw a card. A very cool design. Again, kind of like a Verity Circle type commander, which actually I'm not sure if I'm going to mention them here in a little bit. I might. But a Verity Circle type commander where it's like, okay, you get a benefit for your opponent's creatures tapping as long as you basically are the one who are tapping them, not them just attacking with them essentially or tapping them in other ways. So you get benefits out of that. You have to pay for that. That payment, though, isn't really all that expensive. Again, 1 mana to make a 4/4. That's lovely. Get a counter each creature control. Obviously, if you build up an army, that can be quite lovely as well. Scry to draw a card. That's a good amount of card selection, which you, of course, can make even more deadly with, like, an Elegith. But this commander, essentially, I mean, it doesn't exactly... It's not like a perfect combo because it's technically not infinite, though there are definitely ways to make it infinite. But, yeah, Opposition, which I accidentally said earlier as a card, I think when I was talking about Oppression, is a crazy brutal card. Enchantment for 4 mana, tap an untapped creature, control tap target artifact creature or land. Okay, this is only one card that this commander really pairs incredibly well with. And yes, you can say that, okay, you know what? If there are problematic cards for a commander, just don't include any of those. Problem is, there's a lot of them, number one. Number two, yeah, the kind of goal of this deck is just to tap down your opponent's creatures so they really don't do anything. And again, with a card like this in play, you're like, oh, I could also just, I guess, untap all your mana rocks and all your lands. Okay, you're not doing anything. Awesome. Yeah, this one, yeah, Opposition is definitely a well-named card. So essentially, again, but basically what this does is you just tap your commander. You tap down a creature. You pay 1. You make another creature. You tap that creature to tap down another creature. You pay 1. You do it again and again and again. Essentially, you're making as many creatures as mana you have, and you tap down that many creatures. So essentially, you're going to keep doing this over and over again. You're going to make an absurdly large army. You're going to tap down your opponent's things basically permanently, including their lands. I mean, not permanently. They get to untap, but then you're like, okay, untap them again, or tap them again. Yeah, crazy good things with this one. I mean, how about another one like Junkwinder? Hey, affinity for tokens, you're just paying blue for this, essentially, most of the time. Whenever a token is about for a control, tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. It doesn't untap your controller's next untap step. Very similar, but yeah, basically tap down your opponent's creatures. They don't untap for the next untap step, and also make that many creatures. And then also, yeah, just tap down all their other non-land permanents, including Banner Rocks. How about Court Street Denizen? Another white creature in the battlefield control, tap target creature opponent controls. Again, basically, you're doing that as well. You're just saying, hey, okay, cool. Pay as much mana as I have to make that many tokens to tap down your tokens, or tokens creatures. Another one, Captro Kite Fins. Yeah, can you see the pattern? There's a lot of these. Whenever it or another creature in the battlefield control, tap target creature opponent controls. There are an absurd amount of these kinds of effects. And again, even if you're not utilizing those, just a very simple, like, Bluster Squall type effect that's going to just tap down all your opponent's creatures for very cheap. You're like, okay, tap down all your creatures. Cool. No, they're tapped down. Great. All right, I'll spend some mana. I'll make some creatures. Good for me. Oh, by the way, I'm going to cast these cards that make it so your creatures don't untap then as well, because that's fun. So yeah, overall, I like these designs. I do like when they play in different spaces, when they're like, okay, We haven't explored like tap villains creatures. They just, I mean, I guess if you took out the making the 4 for elemental, it would be a lot less powerful as a commander, but also it'd be a bit more fair in that it doesn't really combo with crazy things like the ones that we just talked about, like opposition. So again, one that when I first read it, I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's pretty exciting. You can do some pretty cool things with it. And it was like, oh, it does with this. Oh, it goes with this. Oh, it goes with that. Oh no, it goes with way too many things. And it just kind of, again, it's not a strategy, I would say it's like exactly stacks, but it's like stacks adjacent kind of in a way, because yeah, there's definitely some resource denial that can happen there. So yeah, Hill of the Icy Crown, though it doesn't have to be built in that way, I know myself, I would probably build it as well as I could, and it would be hard to ignore those cards that work so well with it. So yeah, Hill of the Icy Crown, I am very sorry, but you're a commander that I will not be playing. And finally, I am very sorry, Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir, I will not be playing with you. Now, Sidar Jabari is one of the most popular commanders of this year, I believe. There's like 7,000 or so decks. There was a lot of decks built around this one. It was a very popular, I believe, precon? A 4/3 human knight for 4 mana in total in Esper. Eminence. Stop right there. That is literally the reason why I won't play this one. Now, am I a bit salty because of Eminence commanders? Yes, I'm going to admit that right now. I just do not like that keyword. I just do not like that concept. I just do not like players getting a free benefit just for playing that commander. That's basically what this is. It's essentially you start off with a ley line in play that players cannot deal with, and they just get a benefit for that. You just get a benefit for doing absolutely nothing other than just sitting down at the table with this commander. Again, Dragon, Edgar Markov. I mean, there's more powerful ones out there, yes. Okay, I'm not saying this one's just overpowered or anything like that. I just inherently do not like Eminence. And the fact that Wizards brought it back when they probably realized they made a mistake when they came out with it is just kind of weird to me. And just like, come on, can we be done with it? Just no more Wizards. No, bad Wizards, bad. More phasing, less Eminence. Okay. Anyways, whenever you attack with one or more knights, if it's in the command zone on the battlefield, draw a card, discard a card. So basically free looting whenever you're attacking with knights. Flying first strike, deals counter to your player, turn target knight creature card from grave to the battlefield. Again, a cool concept for a commander. And if it literally did not have Eminence, if it was like, hey, if it's on the battlefield, you get that trigger, or like ETB, and also on the battlefield. There you go, Wizards. There you go. Cool. It's got multiple things. It's got ways to do it. Great. Check mark, sign off. It's great for me. I'm fine with that. But again, because it's Eminence, I'm just a bit salty because of that. I admit, again, just there are players out there that love Eminence. That's completely fine. But again, Eminence to me is just, I hate the concept. I am very sorry. I just do not like that concept. So again, Wizards, because of that, I guess I'm talking to you right now, Wizards. For some reason, because of that, I will not be playing with this commander that you designed. Sorry, Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so it's time for me to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what your thoughts are on my picks for commanders that I will not be playing. Are you already playing with some of these commanders? Some of them are pretty popular, again, like Sidar Jabari. Yeah, many popular commanders on this list, but yeah, just some that I can't play for one reason or another. Or I guess I should say I'm not willing to play. Now, are there commanders on this list that you're like, yeah, that's completely fine, you should be playing that, whatever? Or are there other commanders that I didn't mention on this list that are ones that you will not be playing for one reason or another? So yeah, let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in any of these commanders or any of these cards, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below, because again, even though I'm not playing with them, does not mean that you don't have to play with them. Actually, I've made some deck techs on some of these as well. So yeah, make sure you check those out. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support.